That full screen.
All right. Good morning, everyone. This morning, I will be heading up the show here as Mr. Youngs, the Medicare machine himself, has taken a leave of absence to go enjoy some time with his family. So, welcome to the Medicare Machine Factory podcast. This is Top 1% podcast. I am Tyler Tingue, and with me is Dylan Youngs, the up and coming new version of the machine.
I guess we could call it that, yeah.
It's like being in the factory and trying to tweak and make modifications. How are you
Yeah.
this morning?
I'm doing great. A little groggy, but I am every morning, but I'm ready to go.
Awesome. So, why don't you give everyone a little bit of background insight as to who you are and
Sure.
your
Um,
introduction here?
yeah, so basically I'm Joshua's oldest son. I've been in the business, or I've technically been licensed now for just about 2 years. Um, it's taken three tough tries to actually get it going and getting it to work for myself. Um, I am a lot younger than a lot of people in the Medicare space. I'm only 20. So learning to be adaptive and be able to get through these processes and learn all these different things that take most people a few years to master. It's been a difficult but fun process to be able to put myself through the ringer and kind of expose myself to risky different things to make myself develop in a way that I wanted to and get me to the point where I want to be earlier than if I would have started in like when my dad started or when you started. Um, but yeah, other than that, I got six siblings that are all younger than me. I'm the oldest of six, but they're split between two sides of my family. And yeah, I really got into the business mainly because of my grandparents. My grandfather's on Medicare. He got on early after going on disability and having a bad surgery go wrong. And then my dad's mom, my grandma on that side, is also uh, working with us as well. So um, yeah, that's basically how I got into the business, and so far it's been a learning experience for sure.
Nice. So, touch on a couple of things that you mentioned.
Hmm.
You had mentioned, having this being your third go around for getting into it. So, can you take us through the first two tries and what kind of led to the exit on those, and what's making this time different for you?
Well, the first time I came in was 2 months after I had graduated high school, which was a hectic time for me. I had just moved back into my dad's house, and from there, I got licensed in 2 weeks in my life and health. Thankfully, I passed the test first try go around, so I didn't have to deal with that for long. After that, it was just getting used to the certifications and everything, and filling my brain with as much Medicare jargon and reading material that I to get into everything. The hardest thing for me when I first came in, though, was I was just not responsible enough. I was young and dumb still. I still am, but a lot younger and dumber when I first came in. Um, so I just didn't have the self-discipline to be able to go into it as a broker like I thought I wanted to make my own schedule, to be able to force myself to work those longer hours in the beginning to get the ball rolling and everything. Uh, so I ended up leaving. I went and worked a regular 9 to 5 job for a while. Ended up coming back the next summer after I had moved to Denver and tried again as a broker, which ended up turning into an LOA at the time. Once again, I just wasn't ready. I put myself in a crappy financial situation at the time, which put a lot of stress on me while I was working. And once again, like I said, I just didn't have the correct work ethic and the right drive to be able to get through the hard early stages of the business, especially just because when you do first start, as you know, Tyler, most of the time when you start as a broker, it's straight commission. So for the first couple of months, you could be making a lot less than what you're usually used to making. So picking out of your savings and doing those small things can kind of add up on your stressors. Um, and a combination of all that just had me overwhelmed. So I ended up leaving again. I did construction for a whole year after that. And now I came back in the beginning of March this year And my first month back as an FOA under Joshua, my dad, I did 20 apps in April. So um, I feel like the stages of coming back, it went from me having no development and no responsibility. I hadn't grown up at all yet, to I was doing things by myself, but I still didn't have it figured out, and I still needed that guidance. To now I've come in with the mindset that no matter what happens, this is a career, and I'm investing a lot of my time and all of my energy into it in order to build that foundation of success that I'm going to need in the future. Because the more I thought about it, even working that construction job for a year, in order to get to what I could be making in this job in 1 to 2 years, it would take me 10 to 15 years to get raises up to that point. So it it took me forcing myself to give the perspective my dad's been trying to give me my whole life. I had to see it on my own, or in order to see the brevity of it and the importance of that lesson.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, getting started, I think when you were talking about the mindset and being in the right place, as an 18-year old young man, fresh out of high school coming into it, it's hard to jump into that. There's not a whole lot of people I would imagine out there that have the quote unquote real world experience at 18 to be
Yeah,
able to have that
exactly.
kind of discipline. So, the fact that you're able to acknowledge that and recognize it and make those adjustments so quickly. And I mean, yes, it's been about 2 years, but it was less than 2 years, but
Yeah, a
being
little
able to
under.
see that and recognize that, speaks volumes to your young wisdom to be able to see those items. Um, with the mindset, I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't have. You touched on a couple of points that I think impact people quite a bit when they're first getting into the business, especially being younger. One of them being,
Yeah.
just self-discipline to maintain your schedule. So what have you kind of done to help overcome that and put yourself into a place where you can make sure that you maintain that schedule and discipline to get up when you know you don't have a clock to punch, so to speak?
Yeah, exactly. The biggest thing for me is when I was doing construction, I was doing gutters, and I was doing gutters on like 3-story larkspur homes in the middle of the pine trees. So I was up very high. I was doing a lot of dangerous things like 40 feet off the ground. And what that taught me is I would have to go to work every day, and it didn't matter if I didn't want to do it. The work had to get done, and until that got done, I couldn't go home. So building up that self-discipline where it was kind of forced upon me, I had a stricter schedule. Coming back into the business after having that experience and knowing like, hey, doing this for 8 to 10 hours a day rather than climbing up to the top of a roof and hanging off the edge of it for 8 to 10 hours a day is a lot more worth my time to me and a lot safer and more fun for me. Uh, so taking that into the business when I came back, I wake up at every morning at 5. I live in Denver right now, and I make a commute out to Fort Morgan, which is an hour and 15-minute drive every day. And most people would not do that in general. So it's basically, I've just been forcing myself to do the more difficult things. Once you're able to, in your mind, justify what you're doing because you know what the end goal is going to be, once you have that picture in your mind that 2 to 3 years down the road, I could take the whole summer off if I wanted to and go to Mexico, go to the Jamaica, whatever it may be, and take vacations. Looking down at what it could be if I put the work in today gives me the motivation and the discipline to be able to make my schedule and form fit it to what I need it to be. Uh, so the main thing is like I like to come into the office early just because the drive home is really long. But eventually, as I get deeper into this and I have more of a flexible schedule to where I can work from home too, um, my idea is that during the work week is for you to get all of the tasks ahead of you done, whether that be within your job, whether that be in life. The main thing is that if you're going to put your effort and your time into this career, you have to set aside that time and not think like, oh, I can take a break here, oh, I can do this. And you don't want to not give it that value that it really has. You have to treat the time as if it's your paycheck every time that you're using it. Because like most people say, time is the most valuable thing. You might get a paycheck every 2 weeks, but the day that just went by is never going to come back. So really utilizing um, every hour, every second that's given to you to move you closer to where you want to be. That's kind of my mindset on how I've been able to force myself to work longer hours, or force myself to make a drive an hour to get to the office by 7, to work until 5 or 4, whatever it may be, and then drive home, have like an hour to make dinner and relax, and then go to bed again and do it the next day. So it's just understanding and realizing that you're making a sacrifice today for your happiness and security in the future, because otherwise you're not going to get there. Most people don't realize that no one's going to come and save you. No one's going to come and help you. You have to make that first decision on your own, and you have to make that first step.
Absolutely. And so you'd mentioned something on about getting to that point. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, with your dad being who he is, I've known you since basically you were born. You know, and
Yeah.
having the influence, that hands-on in the home training from your father, everything else. You
Yeah,
know, some
exactly.
people might look at that and go, "Oh, you know, Dylan's got this huge leg up because he's got it there." But you know, I've got 6 kids, and
Mm-hmm.
you you know about them. You know, there's struggles there, and as much as I can pour into them and do that, uh, you'd mentioned you had to kind of come to that realization on your own.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up too, because if people do think that I have a leg up or an opportunity because Josh was my father, you're right. You are right, because he is a book of information that I couldn't ask anyone else to be, that I can always ask questions to. But it was also almost kind of a handicap because we're so alike. I didn't, for most of my life, it was just butting heads and us arguing. I didn't listen to a thing he said because I wanted to be right and he wanted to be right. And it was just a competition the whole time. So a lot of the really important lessons that my dad tried to teach me when I was growing up, or even when I was a late teen, uh, I forced myself to learn it the hard way, like he always said I would, because he knows me so well. And from there, I was able to make that realization. But the thing is that you could have Michael Jordan, you could have LeBron James be your coach for 5 years, and you could still suck at basketball at the end of those 5 years. The point is that you have to be willing and coachable, and be willing to make steps to go outside of your comfort zone and do things different than you're doing currently, to be able to take that advice and to listen. Otherwise, if you're not ready to listen, it might take some other outside force, such as life getting thrown at you, to force you to see those lessons in action rather than in theory. Because for me, I have to see stuff happen and I have to understand it in my own way, or I just can't comprehend it. That's why a lot of the lessons my dad tried to teach me, I understood what he was trying to say. I understood the message. I just didn't understand, like I said, the brevity or the importance of that lesson in the scope of life in relation to reality. Um, so yeah, if it seems like a leg up, it kind of is, but at the same time, we still go back and forth all the time. And sometimes it can be a difficult process of communication, for sure.
Oh yeah, no, and I mean, with seeing it with my kids, I deal with that all the time. Where I could tell them something till I'm blue in the face,
Yeah.
beat them over the head with it. They're not going to listen to a word I say because I'm dad, right?
Hmm.
But their friends say the exact same thing, maybe change
Hmm.
a word, if that, throw some slang in there, and oh, it makes perfect sense. Or they'll go out and they'll do it. It's like, hey, don't touch that. It's hot. Don't touch that. It's hot. Oh, I'm not going to touch it again. It's hot, because I learned the hard way, right? And you
Yeah,
you are so much like your father. It's unbelievable in some cases. But
I hear it a
I
lot.
think I think that's actually going to end up serving you quite well, because I mean, looking at where your dad's at, where he's gone, what he's done to build the business, the effort and energy that he's put into developing the system. I mean, I've seen it from ground level up, as he was, my mentor coming into it when he was still just an agent manager when I first started, and seeing the way
Yeah,
that transitioned. For you to have that same ability and likeness to him to do that. And I know that, just like every other parent out there, your dream is for your child to at some point supersede what you did. Now your
yeah,
dad's super red, so he's going to make it harder for you to try to surpass him at any point in time. So you're going to have to really work for it. But I definitely think with you having that younger start, the systems and the tools and the foundation laid, right? I mean, it's a little easier to go down a cobblestone road than it is a dirt road, a little
Hmm.
easier to go down a slightly paved road than it is the cobblestone. So I think you're going to have a much easier time getting that initial push to push past that. I just think that your dad's going to keep the road under construction, limiting the
Yeah,
flow of
probably.
traffic. So you'll be racing him down the Autobahn and he has a head start. So,
Yeah,
um,
he's in a Lambo, I'm in a Pinto, so.
right. Yeah. Eventually you work your way up and, get some upgrades in there and we'll
Yeah,
get you there and you're getting by him. Um, you
yeah.
are pretty young getting into the business. I do know a handful of other agents and brokers that are similar to your age, started close to where you're at now, at 19, 20 years old, being able to
Mhm.
jump in there and do that. And what disadvantages and what advantages, like the top one or two for each of those, do you think that brings to where you're at?
I'd say the biggest advantage to it, I'll start with the good. The biggest advantage would be that I have a lot of time. I don't have kids. I have a girlfriend, but I'm not married or anything. Um, I'm very flexible and I don't have many responsibilities that I care to every day. I mean, like I have a cat, but other than that, it's really easy to take care of one of those. The time is the biggest thing, especially in the beginning, because you need to be able to sacrifice that time. And the size of the sacrifice can be pretty different if you're sacrificing family night with the kids and your wife, or if you just can't go on a date night with your girlfriend for the night. It's a big difference. So I feel like in the beginning, because when you're young, like I am, and when you have this opportunity, the best thing that I could say for the advantage part is to utilize your time as much as possible so that when you have all those things in the future, a wife, a kid, a family, whatever you want, um, you are not forcing yourself to make as big of sacrifices. Like as we can both tell right now, my dad's at Disney World um, with the rest of my family right now, and they're having a ton of fun. That would be an example of he sacrificed a ton of time when he was in his mid 30s, when I was in high school, when I was in middle school, starting the business up. There was a lot of nights where he made it home past 9 o'clock. Very late dinners. You get to say hi to him a couple of times during the week, and then maybe talk to him for a little while on Sunday. So if you think about it when you're younger, getting into the business as if I make this sacrifice now, it's going to be much less of a sacrifice than what I would have to sacrifice in the future if I come to that understanding then and I want to start then. So when you're younger coming in, like I said, biggest thing is that you have all that time on your hands. The biggest disadvantage, I would say, is your age. You just being young and you talking to your elders, you going to people's homes who have lived almost a full life and they're getting ready to. I always tell people reap what they've sown in a positive way from what they've done their entire life, what they've worked so hard to achieve. They're ready to relax and utilize what comes to them for working so hard their whole life. So talking to some punk kid like me, fresh out of high school or whatever it may be, sometimes that can make them uneasy. So the biggest thing for me is I do mostly phone sales now. My voice is deeper and I can get away with over the phone a lot more than what I could in person because they don't immediately go, "How old are you? Are you sure you can do this?" Because as soon as they ask that question and they look at you like that, it's an immediate, "I don't know if I trust you to do this. Like, I don't know
Oh
if I
yeah, no,
trust you to handle this stuff with me." Yeah.
I got that coming in, and I was 10 years your senior when I came in. I was 30 when I
Yeah,
started, so
exactly.
it was I
Exactly.
can definitely relate to that and that being a hard part. So I mean, I can only imagine how much worse it is, especially when you keep yourself clean shaven. You still got your baby face going on there. So
Yeah, exactly.
what do you think the best way that you've been able to come up with so far is to be able to overcome that? I mean, I know you said you're working mostly over the phone right now, and you're doing a lot of telesales, lead working, those kinds of
Hmm.
things, but you're still meeting people in person and
Yeah.
going out to do them. So, what do you think is the biggest tip you could give somebody to bring them some value for how to overcome that when you're youth or newer into the industry to be able to establish your credibility at the beginning of
Mhm.
that meeting to overcome those, bias opinions that they may have based on your age?
The main thing I would say is your body language and the way you speak and the cadence of the way you speak. So, for example, I went to an appointment in Fort Collins a couple of weeks ago where I sat down with a lady and her mother. She was younger and she attained Medicare from disability. And we sat down, and by the end of it, her mother asked me the question I said is a scary question, which is, "How old are you?" And I told her, I said 20, and she told me she thought I was 28. So the biggest thing is when you're speaking to people that are your seniors, and this is a very serious topic, not like deadly serious, but it's health insurance. These are things that matter to people and could affect them majorly in the future. So it's not something they want to tread lightly on and not something that's super jokey. So one thing that I found is be serious in the way that you talk, mean what you say, and be professional. So when you're going through the presentation, whatever it may be, you don't always want to sound as if you are just trying to solve every problem that they have. Because that sound like I told you yesterday when we were on the phone like this, you can smell the salesman on your voice when you come and you go, "Hi, Miss Jones, how are you doing today?" You can smell it, you can see it, you can hear it, all of that. Uh, the major thing is to treat it as if this is your professional career. You're serious about this, but at the same time, you're not mean. You can be lower tone of voice rather, and be serious and also still be joking and crack in the little jokes that you have through your process and still make it work. But the main thing is that you don't want to make it seem like you're here to play around. Because one thing I've had a client tell me is, "How old are you?" And they tell me younger, or I tell them 20, and they go, "Oh, well, usually that means you're going to be gone in about a year." A lot of people my age are job hoppers. They go all over the place. So making sure that you can establish the trust in the beginning, that you know what you're talking about, and that you're a professional in this situation and you're here to be the professional and the expert on this situation. As soon as you can make it clear and have control over the conversation, um, that's the biggest thing. From there, you'll be able to go through the process and either make the sale or not make the sale and not have it be based or biased on your age. Like I said, it's just the biggest thing is to show that you know what you're doing, you're professional. Um, Check your slang. I used to say sweet a lot when I first started talking. And by the end of it, I say loony now, which I don't think a person under the age of 40 has said for a really long time because I told my friends that, and they're, "What do you mean, loony?" So if you pick up on the little words and the slang that they use, especially for that age group, talk to your grandparents. Whatever you can do to get more comfortable to talking to someone that has a big generational gap from you got to find ways to relate. You got to understand what it was like for them to be younger and what their life was like at coming up, everything that they lived through. It's being able to have that perspective and not treat them as if some people treat elderly people as if aren't able to do anything. Like, "Oh no, you don't take out the trash. You couldn't. You'd fall over." You don't do that kind of stuff. You are respectable. You take care of them in a way that's professional and not as if you're a caregiver, and answer any questions that you have and make it seem as if you are giving them all of the educated information for them to make an educated decision on what they want to do. That's your job. You're not there to make the decision, you give them information. That's the biggest thing.
Absolutely. So going into that a little bit, um, you know, with the example that you gave there, you'd mentioned the gal being on disability, being younger. If I remember correctly, we were going over some of the sales stuff in the team chat. You had a couple of people that were right around your age that
Yeah,
had jumped
5
in
years
there.
older than me. Yeah.
So, in that situation, like you said, it's a very serious situation for somebody, right? If they're getting Medicare that early in life, they obviously have some type of medical condition that's going on for them to qualify. So what you're doing definitely is going to impact them and have a huge bearing on their access to care, their cost, their affordability, those various items, and being able to make an impact for them in a positive way.
Yep.
So not joking around, not being very serious and dedicated, but at the same time, I know from seeing you and hearing you, you do go into a lot of what your dad does, a lot of what I do, where we really try to establish and build that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're doing that with your clients being younger, how do you think that the what tactics, I guess, do you use to do that, or how do you think that that might vary from your age perspective, being younger in that industry,
Mm-hmm.
to relate to somebody? I mean, I know you mentioned the slang terms, using, loony
Mm-hmm.
instead of sweet, those kinds of things. But other than that, like, to actually establish that relationship, what do
Mm-hmm.
you find to be the most effective in that?
Well, early on, so early stages of talking to someone, that this could be like the first call, the first face-to-face meeting that you have, whatever it may be. The first thing that you want to do, and we preach about this all the time, the first question is, how are you? And that takes them away from what's going on. You talk about that until they're blue in the face, until they ask, who are you? And then from there, you have to be ready right then and there with what your pitch is, whatever it may be. You have to know what you do and why you do it, and you have to be able to communicate to them, without sounding like you're just trying to sell them something. You have to really make them believe, and you have to mean it too. You shouldn't be doing this if you're just trying to swindle people, but you have to mean that you care, and that you're going into this um, not for greed or whatever it may be, but to help people, and that's the biggest thing. So when they ask, first thing is, hi, how are you? You find out how they are. You find out what state they're in. What's the weather like over there? Do a quick Google search. Whatever you can do to get little tidbits of information to make conversation. The longer you can make that first 30 seconds of the call, just about how their day is and what the weather's like, whatever it may be, something you both can relate on, the easier it's going to be for you to be able to break the ice and tell them who you are and what you do. That way, when you start into the qualifying stuff, whatever it may be, you already have that trust built up in the beginning. Because the biggest thing I tell people too is, when you're on the phone or if you're talking to someone in person, the best way to get better at it is to force yourself to talk to strangers in public. If you can learn how to talk to people and relate to them and build a relationship with a stranger, it doesn't have to be a deep relationship, but even an acquaintance where you find something in common and you meet somebody, you go out of your way to talk to them, where otherwise there would be others putting you guys together. It's a great way to practice to build your skill in being able to talk to strangers and get them to pay attention to what you're saying. Gain interest, where you can drop words, where you can add a little bit of flair on some ends to get people's attention. It's all about the little things. So in the beginning, I think that, like you said, the biggest thing for building the relationship, even with the younger people too, is to show, one, that you understand what they're going through and that it's not an easy thing. Two is that you do all of the double checking to make sure that they're not going to have issues with whatever it may be, with costs, medical bills, prescriptions, now rather than after the policy starts. So you clarify information before you even talk about the policy. You get meds, doctors, whatever it may be. That's a part of building the relationship. You find out who they are. And a main speech I do that I think helps a lot of people understand that I care is, I go into doctors and I tell people, well, do you have a primary care physician that you like to see currently? And they either say no or they say yes. If they say no, I say the biggest thing that you want when you're finding a doctor is, one, number one's most important. They got to be qualified to do their job. And then two, they need to be someone that you like and that you get along with. Those are the two most important things. And when you go into shopping for a doctor, not only will I help you call through to these people, I'll also give you recommendations on people that have done my other clients right in the past. And when I go into that speech and I tell them how much I care and how much I'm willing to do just to help them find a doctor, they really start to see, like, oh, this kid might not be BSing me right now. And you go through it, and you can almost see it in someone's eyes when they begin to listen to what you're saying and trust you and not be so defensive. That tenseness goes away. They relax. They sit back in their chair. So just look for the little sign that you look for in a real conversation, and you'll be able to see those same similarities when you're doing an appointment or whatever it may be, to be able to start building that relationship and get someone to listen to what you're saying without it sounding like you're selling them something.
Absolutely. And I liked what you said about, practicing that outside of that, because that's one thing that, my Ryan gives me such a hard time about that all the time. It's like, it doesn't matter where we're at, you and grandpa, the same thing. You strike up a
Hmm.
conversation with anybody and it's, doesn't matter who it is. They could be 90, they could be 4, and you're like their best buddy for that 5 minutes that you're
Hmm.
standing in line next to them or whatever, having that thing. And I think that those little tactics that people don't, you got to leave your work at the door, right? You can't bring that baggage home with you with any job. This
Hmm.
construction,
Yeah.
our healthcare workers who are, sorely underappreciated, they get beat
Hmm.
on all day long to do it. You got to leave that baggage at the door. But at the same time, just like a nurse, if she, is running around, or a doctor or whatever, and some kid falls at the playground and, gets a scrape, sprains a leg, whatever, they're not just going to sit there and go, oh, that sucks for you, right? They're going to sit there and practice and hone their skills and do that. They're going to read
Hmm.
up, they're going to do their continuing education, they're going to, apply that in life. So going out and doing those things outside of that. So I guess with that in mind, some of the tactics that have been able to develop you and to get that. And good morning to our Facebook user. I apologize. Since Josh was not here, I don't get to see who is on unless I'm directly a friend with them. So whoever that is, good morning. Um,
Good morning.
I know you went to SWAT or not. Did you go to SWAT? I don't know if you went to SWAT.
8%.
8%. I know you went
No,
to
I
8%.
didn't. Yeah. I haven't
Okay.
been to
So yeah,
SWAT,
you
no,
went
not
to
yet.
8%.
I want to go though.
So, I know that you've seen different stuff with 8%, SWAT, various videos and trainings that have been up for Medicare Con, things like that have gone out and you've studied in that. Do you find you get additional tangible value out of those items than what you would get from, say, listening to your dad or me or other people on the team who you might take for granted? Or
Well, what I would say is, like I said before, someone could be telling you the right answers all along, and it could be right in front of your face, but until the right person tells you the right thing at the right time, you're not going to listen. Um, so, like when I went to 8%, the biggest thing that I could see is a lot of what is preached at these conferences and a lot of what is talked about really isn't the nitty gritty, like the detailed stuff that you or a lot of people that go to those things are looking for. They don't go specifically into Medicare sales. They don't go specifically into life insurance, whatever it may be. What it really mainly is about is the way that you think and that the way that you react to things, your mindset. That's the biggest thing. Um, because most people are looking for the meat and potatoes within the details. They're looking for it within like a simple little step that you add to your sales process, and all of a sudden you're doing 1,000 apps a year. It's not as simple as that. And that when you go to these conferences, what you start to learn is that by changing the way that you think and by changing the way that you react or act towards certain situations, you are able to change the outcomes of which happen. Which sounds so simple in theory, but it can be very difficult to work that out in real life. So, um, when you're going to these conferences and things, and you're going to pick people's brains, just keep into perspective that none of the information they're going to give you is going to work unless you're willing to absorb it and apply it into practice. Because some things that work for other people at that conference aren't going to work for you, but there's something there. There's always little gold nuggets, little tidbits of information that you can take and add into your own repertoire of skills uh, to develop into where you want to be. So the biggest thing is being willing and able to take the advice. That is the biggest thing. It's worthless to receive advice unless you are able to hear it and actually digest and listen to it. If you're just going to sit there to get through it, you're not going to gain anything from it. You have to be willing and able to directly apply and directly listen to what's coming to you, and to what you want to do in the future. So yeah,
so,
that's pretty much my opinion on
so
that.
yeah, no. And I agree with you, because the mindset piece of it, a lot of people talk about mindset and understanding that, how to incorporate that into what you're doing in the daily life. You have to be able to absorb that take it in, utilize that mindset. And I think that kind of speaks to what you were saying earlier about, you tried starting out as a broker. Obviously that didn't work out, left, came back, left again. So this time when you came back, I've noticed it. I've seen a huge difference. You have a much different mindset in that. And some of that was not going to a conference, I'm guessing, to do that when you were 40 feet up in the air, hanging off a roof, trying to put up a gutter, right? But without the tangible meat and potatoes that you have with it, you're not going to be able to, take that mindset. I mean, you can have a great mindset, but if you don't know what you're doing, you're not going to be able to move forward. So when you came back in with the new mindset, do you think that mindset helped you to better understand and pick up those skills and the knowledge base that you needed to progress further from being able to, change your mindset to be more receptive and be more coachable because of that?
Yeah. So when I came back, like you said, when I had that different mindset and I was thinking differently about the way I wanted to go about things and the way that I was going to react to things, the biggest thing is that when you, in my situation, when you leave and you come back to something and you're thinking differently, or there's been a bunch of time that's passed, you can really see the plain stake mistakes that you made clear as day in front of you. So coming back and being able to think about it differently, all I had to do was apply the things that were being told to me. Because for me, the Medicare information, the details, the plan benefits, all of the rules and stuff, that wasn't hard for me to get through. If you do enough reading and if you just expose yourself to it enough for like 6 months, a lot of this stuff won't leave your brain. For me, I remember numbers really easily. So like the Part B premium, whatever it may be, 164.90. All you need to do is memorize major numbers, and that helps you a lot with the meat and potatoes. The rest of it, usually you have the booklet with you, and it's not that big of a deal. Going into it, being able to think about, I have to make 50 lead calls in the next hour, and then I got to do it at noon and then at 3. Understanding like, yeah, it's going to suck because a majority of those are going to be just dial tones, and some people are going to answer, get pissed, and hang up on you. Understanding that you need to do it no matter what. That's just that's your motions. You got to get to the point where you have a schedule and a routine that that you go through. And once you're able to just trust the process, put your head down and go through the dirt, get through the tough work in the beginning, and have that mindset of that this is worth it. Because in the beginning, this job is very repetitive. You do a lot of the same things every day. You talk sometimes a lot of the same people every day. So it can get repetitive and almost boring in your mind. You have to understand that while you're doing this, what you're working towards and what the end goal is. Otherwise, you lose sight of it and it starts to seem like it's not worth it. So having the mindset coming into it where you understand that what you're putting into this is going to come back out, and even more so, that's when you're able to push yourself that little bit more, because in relation to what you are working towards, it's not that small of a pain, not that small of a feat to conquer when you look at it that way. So coming in with the right mindset gives you perspective on how all this hard work and all the tough things that you do are going to pay off in the future. It's just being able to trust that, and like you said, trust the process and understand that you're going to be able to do it. You just have to do the work, and the work isn't easy. And once you get past that part, it gets to be easier.
So going into doing the work, like you said, the first, excuse me, the first,
Bless you.
thank you. The first, what was it? Maybe 6 months that you were, when you made your first run there. I think I can't remember off the top of my head. How many sales do you think you had during that first 6 month stretch?
Oh, maybe like 6. I did really tough. It probably was even lower than that.
And then when you came back the second time, I don't think the numbers had improved a whole drastic amount on that go round.
Probably around the same thing.
And so so this time you come back in and you get going back into it in March. You start working it up. Obviously, you guys start turning the faucet back on to fill the hose. Get your pipeline going back up and stuff. And you ended up doing 20 apps in April.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So, and looking into that, it wasn't like you were getting hand-me-downs and everything else either, right? It wasn't like,
No.
someone on the team or your dad went, "Hey, here's one of my clients referred this person, go set them up," right? I mean, these
No,
are
yeah, no
legitimate
layups,
moments.
unfortunately. Other than my grandmother, I wrote my Nana's app that month, so I guess that's a layup if you want to count it. But other than
Fair
that, they
enough.
were all people I had never met or talked to before, and that didn't know who the company was. No
Yeah, if you
relationship
can't close your
whatsoever.
Nana, you got problems. You definitely need to
Yeah,
find
yeah.
another career.
You probably messed up somewhere in the past, but but yeah, I mean, coming back into it, especially in April, because in the beginning of April, I started back in March and I was just doing basically admin office work for a little while until my contracts got fixed. And the end of March, beginning of April is when I came back into selling. When I did that, the first 2 weeks of April and the end of March, I did nothing. I had my Nana sale and that's it. The last 2 weeks of April, I ended up doing 10 apps each week. And the biggest difference that I can say from the beginning of the weeks or the beginning of April to the end of April is the way that I was going about making my calls and the way that I was thinking. So when I was making my calls in the beginning of April, that first 2 weeks, I was going through my calls, not getting really many answers. I was feeling kind of down about it. I was worried. I was thinking, I was like, oh no, it's just going to be the same thing as last time. And I wasn't really giving the most trust to myself. I wasn't believing in myself as much as I should have been. So I kept going through it. I could have been calling more leads. I could have been going through or getting a hold of them more. I was going through the lead list that I had twice a day. Once I got into that third week and I had a talk with my dad, he came in and he sat down with me on one of my calls. He told me one little tip during that call, and I wrote an app during that first phone call I made in the morning. And what that changed in me was he told me that I needed to do 3 apps a day. That should be my goal and my requirement, which sounds pretty crazy to do every single day. But what ended up happening is when I started believing that 3 apps a day is the minimum and I'm trying to get to like 5 apps a day, I hit 3 apps a day almost every day during that week, or at least two. So forcing myself to make the standard for myself higher than what I even expected that I could do, and really pushing myself to do that work to be able to fill that goal, to finish that goal, really put me in the position to be able to keep that momentum going after I had that first good day, and to keep the energy going on the calls, and to keep the persistency on making my dials. It's a snowball effect. So once you can harness the confidence and the power of getting that first sale, it eases or it eases everything into motion and keeps it going as long as you're willing to pedal your pedals on your bike. If you keep pedaling, that bike wheel's still going to keep moving and that chain's going to help you along the way, but it's not going to do all the work for you. So the biggest thing is when I from the end or from the beginning to the end of April is the way that I was going about my calls and how hard I was working to serve those people that I was given as leads, and to make sure that I got a hold of them and I got out what I needed to tell them and what I was trying to do for them, how I was trying to help them, because it's my job to do that. Once I started thinking of it like that, rather than, oh, I get off at 4, how many hours do I have left until I go home? Today sucks. Don't think about the tedious parts of the job, because it's going to make it even more tedious. If you focus on the end goal, if you focus on what you're doing at hand and you just do the best that you can in the moment, your success is going to follow and it's going to show up. You just have to make that effort in the beginning for you to be able to see that and reap that in the end.
No, absolutely. Well, and I mean, it makes me laugh a little bit because that's just a Joshua thing, right? Like, okay, cool, you wrote an app, go write
Yeah.
3 more, right? So you got to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you
I
got
got
to
a fist
appreciate
bump and a soda that day, so he gave me a little bit of a good job.
that. Yeah, there you go. So he comes in and he tells you, he listens to your call, and I mean, again, pros and cons, right? Having your dad, the machine being there to teach you. One, You've got
Yeah.
him there. You've got access. He cares a lot about you, probably more than he would most any other agent. Even me, anyone else. Not that he doesn't care, but you're his kid, so he's a little more vested in
Yeah.
trying to help you succeed, right? But on the negative side, I also know that he's a lot harder on you than he would be on other people, and gets more frustrated because he can see that potential and knows you. So when he came in and he's sitting with you on this call, it's not like he was doing the call and you're listening to him make calls. He was listening to you make the call. He's going through listening to what you were saying, how you were saying it. What did you specifically change in that call, what he told you? Because I know that made a huge impact in how you were addressing certain things on your calls.
The biggest thing, I was talking about it earlier, the biggest thing that he told me that the change in the way that people reacted to me when I was getting a hold of him on the phone, was he keeps telling me, and this is a good thing because it's almost like an affirmation, that I am the professional. I know what I'm talking about. I make the recommendations. I have control over the call. So when I'm going into the call and I have someone answer, the biggest thing that he told me was, I was immediately trying to go in to qualify people. So I was going, hi, how are you doing? Blah, 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 blah. Do you have Medicaid and Medicare? And going from that to asking if I have Medicaid and Medicare, they immediately go, oh, is this a sales call? See ya, and then go away, hang up. What he asked me to change was, when you're calling someone and you know that they have Medicaid and Medicare because it's a Medicaid lead, what you do is you go, hi, how are you? You get that out of the way. And when they ask, who are you? You say, well, my name's Dylan. I'm a Medicare broker, and I'm local. Basically, what I do is I help to make sure that you're receiving all the benefits that you may be missing out on. Are you currently getting your healthy food card? Are you getting your dental? Are you getting your vision? You could exclude the first part of what I said there. If you just ask, are you getting your healthy food card? Are you getting your dental? Are you getting your vision? Some people, a lot of people I've talked to recently, at least in Colorado, that have Medicaid and Medicare, they're not doing anything else. So when I mention a healthy food card, when I mention dental, when I mention vision and extra benefits, they go, huh? Because immediately they think of the Medicaid comfort dental, which most people hate. So making that little adjustment and looking for the points of pain rather than trying to qualify to get a sale, looking to find what is causing someone stress, what is hurting them, what is wrong with their situation. When you find that source, you can immediately go into, hey, do you have this? Hey, are you doing this? You can ask them if they are doing the solution. And once they realize it's a solution to their problem that they're not doing, they're going to get curious. And from there, that opens the door up for where you are in control of the conversation because they are wanting to talk to you and find out what they're missing out on rather than you trying to get them to open up to talk about their benefits and what they're doing currently. So the biggest thing is to look for where to poke the bear, what is going to set them off in a good way and make them react to where you can provide that solution without being over salesy or too friendly. That's the biggest thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, one of the things that we talk about all the time, I think we spent like 3 weeks on going into it on our team trainings, and we were doing those.
Oh yeah.
The points of pain, right? Like, we want to know where someone is, right? So someone, just if I'm walking down the street, if I'm, standing in line at the grocery store, whatever it is, and someone walks up to me and, it's blatantly obvious in most cases. I mean, you're in gear right now. I figured I'd wear my Machine Factory shirt today so that I could represent a little bit, but normally decked out in Medicare gear. I mean, your dad and I were out at Medicare Con, we're playing, hanging out a little bit afterwards, and the guys are like, oh, there's no question what you guys do, right? So people are going to ask, they're going to know kind of what we're doing in a lot of cases. And it's having that elevator pitch ready to come off of the cuff like that, right? So that it's hitting that point of pain. It's touching on a resolution that we care and we want to be able to assist with that, right? It's not like we're, like you said, it's not like we're poking the bear to get him angry, right? We don't want to rile him up and have him attack us. We want to poke the bear just enough to like get him to roll over so that we can scratch his belly.
Exactly. Get them to feel that emotion just for a little bit so that you can present how they don't have to deal with that anymore. That's the biggest thing.
Absolutely. No, I think that's a huge piece that a lot of people miss out on because, I mean, FOMO, right? Like,
Hmm.
obviously, a little slang term. You're not going to get that from someone who's generally going on Medicare, but it impacts everybody, whether it's, missing out on getting a healthy food card and a dental card, or, my kid missing out on getting dessert. Um,
Yeah.
there, there's that motivating factor that goes into play. Is like, um, when we're working with these people, it's not that we want to inflict that pain, like you said, being a short amount of time to do that. We want to be able to help them
Hmm.
with that. So going through there and assisting on those things, I think, is a huge help in that. Uh, I had a couple of things that I wrote down here. So one of the things I did want to get to that I think you would have a unique insight for, with younger people getting into the industry. You had mentioned, it's easier with the time,
Hmm.
right? When I started, I I was recently divorced, and then ended up just, meeting my now wife right before that, and
Hmm.
had 4 kids, and she's pregnant. She loses her job. Everything's out the window. We go from, I had a good, job with the union, and she's a manager with a cable company doing all these things. And, we go from 140, 150,000 in income down to
Hmm.
like 70, and then down to 20. Right. And that with 5, 4 kids and a new one on the way and all this stuff. So it's a little bit of a challenge, right? When your dad jumped in, you know, he had you and your siblings, and well, you and
Hmm.
Ty, and Paige was, I believe, brand new when he jumped in.
Yeah, I think
And
she
then,
just was born. Yeah.
right, so, and he jumps into that with a new house payment, a new car payment, all these other things going on, versus where you're at 20, where, not to slight it, but you just haven't had the opportunity to build up to have those responsibilities
Hmm.
yet to necessarily do those things. Besides that freedom factor, I'll call it, to
Hmm.
say, you're not tied down with kids and as many obligations necessarily, usually when you're in your late teens, early 20s, as you are once you hit 30, 40 years old.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
we're going into that. So besides the time factor, where do you see, or what would you tell somebody would be the biggest reason, if you were to go talk to one of your buddies that you graduated with, someone around your
Hmm.
same age, why would someone that age want to get into the industry now, or even in their mid 20s or 30s, whenever it is, but sooner rather than later?
The biggest thing for me is the freedom that comes with this job if you do it right. Uh, if you're willing to put in the time early, if you're willing to put in the effort early and make that sacrifice when you're younger and you have all that time, you are going to be able to do a lot of things with your time when you're still young in your mid to late 20s. So my goal is by my mid to late 20s, I hope that I work hard enough for the next 5 years to where I want to travel a ton. So you got to find out what you want to do in life, what is important to you, and what your main goal is. So other than the time, just to make sure I'm answering your question right, you wanted to know what is the biggest thing other than time that is important for young people or that would motivate them to get into the business, right?
Yeah, I mean, other than the fact that they
Okay.
have the time now to put it in,
Hmm.
to do that, what would be the influencing factor? Why would I want to start this at 20 instead of 30 or 40?
The income potential is huge, especially if you start out as a broker. If you start out as an LOA, it's also a ton of support, and you also have the ability to make a very good amount of money while you're young. The other thing is once you transition to a broker, or if that's what you start out as, you are able to do things in your own way and flourish and be creative with your ideas and really use all the different parts of your brain rather than going into a job that you're going to work you're under a W-2 or W-4 or whatever, and you have one specific thing that is your specialty. When you go into being a broker, not only do you get to deal with exciting Medicare all the time, you also get to build your own business and build a brand and an identity for yourself. Um, it gives you so much freedom, because even if you don't want to do this for the rest of your life, if you get good at this for the next 3 or 4 years and you build up that skill of being a business owner, if you build up that skill of being a responsible person, where you can make those decisions in a risky environment and also come out on top. It's going through the motions and learning all that stuff early. One, you're going to have less repercussions in the long term because you have less now. It's a lot easier to lose the $100 you have in your bank account than it is the 200 grand that you have when you're older in your savings. So taking those risks and going into it early allows you to, one, make a decision if you want to go to a different route when you're older, because you can just basically buy into or fund different businesses. You can get into different fields. The biggest thing is the freedom that comes with it. All of the financial freedom, the free time that we've been talking about, all of that factors into it being a really good spot for younger people if they're willing to sacrifice the party years, so to say. What you would go into college for, if you're willing to put in 3 to 4 years into this business, you can treat it the same as college. You can go do something else. You can continue within the business, whatever it may be. If you're willing to go in and give your full effort, it's going to pay off immensely, and give you the freedom to do what you want to do in the future.
Absolutely. No, I have to agree. The freedom, and it's not just a specific freedom that you get. And to me,
Mm-hmm.
that I see that as one of the biggest values. And it used to
Mm-hmm.
crack me up, is when I started at 30, it was like to have someone 20 years old in the business would have been completely unheard of and ridiculous, right? Like people looked at me at 30 like I was some freak obscenity that,
What are you doing?
yeah. And being able to get into it, I kick myself every day that I didn't listen to your dad sooner, because he was trying to push me for 3 or 4 years at least to get into this sooner. But looking at that, seeing that growth and that potential, the freedom isn't just, the freedom, the financial freedom is one piece of it, right? You can get up to
Mm-hmm.
a very respectable income
Mm-hmm.
and coast if that's what you wanted to do. I mean, that's not going to put you top 1%, or at least not for very long, but
Mm-hmm.
it'll allow you to have a good lifestyle from an income perspective. But it's going to free up your time as well, right? In that
Mm-hmm.
situation, you can, like, Mr. Joshua is running his machine through Disneyland, right? Or Disney World, whatever, right now with
Yeah,
the
like the
kids.
Hollywood part or something. I keep seeing pictures.
So, he's running around crazy right now. But one of the things that you touched on that is, your ability to travel, right? So you have the time to be able to go, you've got the money
Mm-hmm.
to be able to afford to go. And correct me if I'm wrong, but while you're gone, you're still going to be getting paid, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So you have all that flexibility. The other thing that I thought was really neat that you hit on is something that a lot of people forget. Your dad does it a lot. I try to do it as much as I can in different areas, but it allows you that opportunity to afford to do other items, right? So like you
Mm-hmm.
could start another business if that's what you wanted to do. I know Sebastian's talked about potentially looking into getting into this when he graduates, so that he can
Mm-hmm.
fund himself as an artist because he wants to get into doing art and stuff. Um,
Exactly.
Charities are another big thing that I think a lot of people forget. Your passion might not be Medicare, right? It's exciting as it is.
Yeah, it might be philanthropy.
Right. So, whatever you want to do in that, it's going to give you that freedom and an opportunity to get into there. And I think that a lot of younger individuals, like you said, they don't think about that. They go to college, they waste, Nate has said that in a bunch of different videos, right? You're going to spend 3 4 years and how many tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to college to still not know what you're going to do. Highly
Yeah.
unlikely that you're going to use your degree how you thought you were going to, unless you do something very specific like law school or brain surgeon. And even then, you're encompassing so much debt. Being able to put that effort into it and put in the sweat equity when you're younger, I think is a huge thing, that you have the availability to do that at a younger age rather
Mm-hmm.
than wasting it. And to me, I think that that's something I see so many kids. Oh, I'm going to take a year off and I'm going to go travel. All right. I can respect that. I can see where that is. You don't want to encompass yourself with burdens. But people who go to
Mhm.
college for just, 2-3 years of community college just to try and figure out what you're going to do. Like,
Yeah, you're just blowing money out the window at that point
why would
for
you
no
continue
reason.
to do those kinds of things, right? So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, I think our time is up. I am not exactly sure how this thing is going to get ended since all I can
Yeah,
do is
I wa-
the studio.
oh, I can
But
hit leave. I bet you if we both leave, it'll end.
perfect. Well, before we do that, I want to thank
Sweet.
you for
Yeah.
joining me this morning, Dylan, and not leaving me high and dry.
Oh yeah, thank you. I'm glad
So,
I was here early enough.
yes, no, absolutely. I appreciate it. So,
Yeah.
look forward to having you back on here at some point in the near future to see how the growth goes and recap on the successes of where things are at. So,
Yeah,
appreciate you being
next up
here.
will be my 40 app a month podcast.
There you go. That's going to be the goal. I'll mark it there.
Yeah,
I'll
sweet.
obligate you, Joshua, to get you back on when you hit your 40 month.
Yeah. Sweet. Perfect.
Awesome.
Thank you
Well,
again for having me. I appreciate it.
absolutely. No, thanks for being here. Thanks, everybody. I am Tyler Tingu. This is Dylan Youngs. Mr. Youngs, the machine, is not with us today, but we appreciate you being here on the Medicare Machine Factory Top 1% podcast. Everybody make it a great day.